This is The A. I'm Reg Clay.
And Norman G.
This is The A, where we talk about life in the theater and the theater of life.
Yay!
The A is sponsored by Central Works, a new play theater. We want to thank Central Works for sponsoring The A. Central Works reinventing theater one play at a time.
I think double yay.
Double yay, yes. Thank you, Gary and Jan. And we're going to have Jan on one of these days.
Great.
We have a fantastic guest, Stacy Kray. Stacy Kray is a musical writer. She's a singer and a musician, and she wrote the musical Love the Struggle, which deals with the love relationship between Sartre and Simone Du Beauvoir. I always screw that name up. Du Beauvoir.
Beauvoir is what I said. But,
how are you doing, Stacy?
I'm doing well, and I will just say at the outset that I am the proud writer, but I am also just the co-writer. So that I have a co-writer. His name is Yair Evnine, and he's wonderful, and maybe we'll talk about him at some point. In this show. So yeah, so it was a dual effort.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. You and I met during the Musical Cafe. I believe it was 2 years ago in 2018, where I debuted my little mini musical Nia, and you debuted Love the Struggle. And it's gotten a life of its own, Love the Struggle. I mean, you have now the Broadway actors working with you, and it looks like if it hadn't been for COVID-19, it would have expanded a little more.
Well, we're hoping it's still going to go that way. Yes, COVID put a bit of a damper on it, but we were lucky enough to record some really wonderful songs with some, really for me, a dream team of singers, and so that was a really great honor, and I hope we'll get a chance to talk about Nia a little bit too, because that was also a great show, and what a wonderful experience that Musical Cafe workshop was for me, and I think for many of the people that were involved, and I loved seeing your work as well. So.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. And also, really, I want to talk about Sartre and existentialism and the connection with that, because I wrote about that with about 4 Men in Paris. But as I begin all of our podcasts, how was your week, Norman?
I couldn't even tell you. I don't know. I'm done being an old man who is in denial about the fact that he has cancer. And
you're not working with the doctors anymore? The doctors.
We finished that one. There may be a makeup on Tuesday, but on Monday I start a whole new character. Oh gosh, and I haven't even looked at the stuff yet. But I do standardized patient work with medical students, so they have to figure out what's up with my character, and it's always an interesting improv exercise. Today is a big event. Personally, Mara is going to have her first recital of her private students, and we're going to do it in the backyard. And we've got a big backyard, so we'll be able to. We figured it out. If friends and family, just a few friends and family come, we can spread them out in the yard, and it's trombone, so Lord knows you'll be able to hear it at any distance.
That should be fantastic.
But yeah, that'll be happening later this afternoon. So our big part of our week was just clearing and cleaning, and our yard looks fabulous.
Stacy, I want to ask you, since you're a musician, do you also teach music or no?
No, I mean, I am really a sort of a performing songwriter, and I would say a songwriter first. And so I can sing and play, sort of passably well, but I'm not in a category where I would be able, I think, to teach anyone. But I think
you're a guitarist, aren't you?
Yeah, I play guitar and I play a tiny bit of piano, but I wouldn't say to my guitar playing professional friends that I play guitar, because I can hold my own. But as far as teaching, I teach my daughter a little bit, I guess, but
yeah.
Other than that, no, I haven't never taught music.
Yeah, well, that'll be cool, Norman. I mean, I feel excited for your students. And did Mara tell you that I saw her yesterday while now we're talking?
Oh, yes, you were on your. She said you were enjoying the day on your deck.
Yeah, it was a beautiful day. It's one of the cruel things about COVID-19. We're missing all these beautiful days, going places and doing things, and really, there's just nothing. A lot of places are closed down. Well, Stacy, you're in Colorado now, right?
I am, and I left to escape. So I live in San Francisco, and I absolutely love living in San Francisco, except in July and August when it's so foggy, and I just start dreaming about moving to like Phoenix or someplace, the equator, anywhere where I can see the sun. So we had the opportunity to get out and come to Colorado, and I've been here for a couple weeks, and it's been really, it's just nice because we're in a small town, and so we have the ability to walk places, and just being in the mountains. There's really something energizing about it once you get over the altitude sickness.
Yeah. Is it Boulder? What city?
I'm in Aspen actually.
Ooh.
So yeah,
Beautiful.
it's really beautiful, and if you've never been here, it's a quaint little town. I mean, it's definitely got its bling, but it's nice because you can really walk everywhere, and there are a lot of trails and such. And so, it's just been it's just been super peaceful and nice here, and just kind of different. That I was getting a little ragged with the California stuff, and I'll come back. I'm not complaining. California's a wonderful place to live, but yeah, that fog. And I live in a
Right.
foggy part of San Francisco, and it just rolls in, and it kind of hits my yard, and then it rolls back on itself, and it rains, and I was just, after a while, you just get, the energy level goes way down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I can totally feel, but it looks very beautiful in Colorado, and I have no idea what if people are wearing masks or how things are as far as the COVID levels are in Colorado, but
They have, so they're pretty serious about it here. There's a mask zone. So if you go into town, you have to wear your mask all the time, no matter, what you're doing. The only exception is if you're sitting down eating, then you don't have to wear it. But otherwise, it doesn't matter if you're 6 feet or 100 feet away from people. They just want you to wear your mask in this, what they call the mask zone. And they actually have now stenciled it on the sidewalks because there's so many tourists here to just say in bright green, mask zone. And they're out enforcing it. So they're pretty serious about it. And I think the concern here is more just that there are so many people coming from out of town. There's so many tourists, a lot of international travelers. And so I don't think there's a huge outbreak here as far as I am aware, but people are definitely, it feels a little bit like being in the Bay Area, right? Everybody's careful, and masks are required. In fact, I ran out the door this morning without mine, and got like a 20 feet. And I realized I started having that thing, that thing you get with your cell phone where you forget where your cell phone is, or you can't find your cell
that's
phone.
right. Yeah.
Like, I'm having that with the mask. Like, I'm getting that mask panic of where's my mask. So.
And also the stairs. I mean, sometimes, although I haven't gone out without the mask, but I do tend to stare at someone who isn't wearing the mask, not to shame them or whatever, but it's like, hey, what are you doing?
Right.
And I have to remind myself. I mean, and it's gotten a lot serious. I mean, we can dive into current events, but yeah, I mean, now people, the law enforcement are now enforcing mask wearing, where you can get a fine if you don't wear a mask. So I'm glad that we're taking it seriously, although it's probably too little too late. I mean, we're getting into, I think, almost 4 million Americans have COVID-19, and I think almost 160,000 have died. So the numbers just keep going up. And now Trump is now blocking Dr. Blix. And first it was
Right.
Fauci, and now it's Blix. So, it's
Right.
it's a little crazy. I ask everyone, Stacy, how are you optimistic about the election? How do you feel about what's going on politically?
I have been pretty paralyzed by all of this, and I think it's I mean, my eyes have been a lot more on the past, few months, including some stuff that we talked about yesterday, Reg, George Floyd and BLM and COVID and the theater, and thinking about that more at a local level than I am at a national level. The national stuff is almost too big for me. When you say am I optimistic or I'm pessimistic, I have just huge questions about what is going to happen, and I feel like I'm not in a good position to predict that. I'm more trying to process everything that's happened, in the past, in the recent past, particularly to figure out how I can reintegrate with society and with community and with our country in a way that feels helpful. And I'm all for engaging. I'm more of an engager than I am I don't like to sit around and complain or blame. I'm more thinking about how can we change things? And so I'm sort of looking at it from that perspective. And from that perspective, I think I am somewhat optimistic, actually.
I mean, are you disappointed that Biden's the front runner, or did you wish that I don't know if you were a Bernie. I really don't know your political affiliation at all.
I try to keep those things close to the vest, because here's the thing: I'm a philosophy major, and so for me, like for me to pontificate on who was the best Democratic nominee would require me to go, like, I would want to take a PhD course before figuring that out. I'm not, I don't have strong negative feelings about Joe Biden. Um, I and as far as Bernie goes, I love an outlier. I always love an outlier. I always love someone who comes from outside, and so that's pretty great. And Biden clearly is much more of an insider. So that's a little, especially given, I guess the distress that I have over Congress and as a whole and how politics operates at the national level. That's somewhat discouraging.
Yeah. And it's I'm also discouraged at Congress still. I mean, that's been Pelosi and McConnell have been knocking their heads trying to get a stimulus package, a second stimulus package, and nothing's being done. And now I'm hearing they write an executive order which really pleases no one.
Right.
I
saw a meme, but a hashtag that I love this week. And they made a song to it. Mitch better have my money.
Taking the Rihanna song. Yeah.
Oh, it was hilarious. I'm watching these people standing in the street dancing. Mitch better have my money.
Yeah. Well, it's serious. I mean, some folks, landlords, they're not going to take an IOU. They want their money, and
Right.
mortgages, the same thing. Have you been doing the phone bank thing, Norman?
Today. That was another thing I should have mentioned. I did it this morning. Whew, that's nerve-wracking. But mostly what we're doing really is sort of cleaning up the DNC's, their list, because mostly it's either to voicemail or disconnected numbers. That's the majority. Mm-hmm. I made 32 calls, and I talked to maybe 5 or 6 people, and most of them said wrong number. I think at least 1 or 2 were lying, but most of them said wrong number. I talked to 2 people who said they were busy, but yes, they were voting for Biden. And I didn't talk to any Trump people. So
wow, interesting. It's a little discouraging. I would think the Democratic National Committee would have it a little better than that. You can't have these old numbers.
Well, they can't keep up. And it was wild because we get all of their registration information. So there's a little side column that tells you when they registered, mm-hmm. where they registered. To the minute when they were put in the system. And it's wild to see like a 72-year-old who only started voting or only registered in like 2002. And the youngest one I had was, they were pretty young. They were like maybe 19.
Wow.
And I really wanted to talk to that person. I was like, oh my God, please answer, please answer. Yeah. I would love to talk to a 19-year-old, see what they're thinking.
Yeah, it would be cool. And I'll mention one other thing because I really want to jump into our origin story. But so a second grader tested positive for COVID-19. Trump always talking about it's always the older folks. But, and you may have heard, both of you may have heard that in Georgia, a teenager was expelled from school because he or she took a picture of their hallway, and the hallway was full of kids, not masks, showing just the exposure. And instead of praising the kid, the kid was really expelled for sort of exposing what was going on.
Wow,
really, really sad. Also, what touched my heart, Daisy Coleman. I don't know if either of you know that, but there was a documentary called Daisy and hold on for a second, Audrey and Daisy. These were 2 girls who basically committed suicide because of bullying.
Oh.
And, Audie Potts. Audie Potts was her name. She died. She committed suicide several years ago.
Uh-huh.
Daisy had, she was abused. I think when she was she was sexually assaulted. That's what it was.
Right. Yes.
When she was 17 years old. Yeah. Did the documentary, received an immense amount of bullying. Cyberbullying.
Right.
And then I guess she just committed suicide maybe just a couple of days ago. And it's really
23. Sad. She was 23.
Yeah.
I'm having a very emotional reaction to that. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I met her.
You met her?
Oh boy, this is a whole sidetrack. But as part of my,
I didn't mean to trigger you, but please go ahead.
oh, no. Let me just really quickly, sort of process this in front of the camera so you know why I'm having this reaction.
Yes.
When Audrey Pott committed suicide, so as Reg knows, my day job is I'm a lawyer. We started a pro bono, what we call a Know Your Rights program for teens in the Bay Area to educate them about their rights and responsibilities around social media and sexual misconduct and bullying. And Audrey Potts was the reason that the program came about. And so in that program, we've taught, I think at this point, it's over 18,000 kids. We go into high schools and we talk to them about those things as well as hate crimes. And the program has morphed over the last 4 years, but a couple of years ago, I met Daisy after the documentary came out, and wow, I'm really stunned. She was such an incredibly poised and beautiful spokesperson for what had happened to her, and she was kind of, Audrey was the tale of the sort of the bad outcome, and Daisy was kind of this this paragon of hope. So that's really incredibly sad.
I saw when I heard the story, I saw a clip, and they played a clip of her speaking about how she was moving on, and it did sound hopeful.
Yeah, it's very sad, and it should be a reminder that women, I mean, we don't talk because George Floyd has sort of taken over, but the Me Too movement is still alive and active, and
yes,
we should know what women go through. And you and I talk about it all the time, Norman. As men, I don't even think of myself having privilege, but it's a certain privilege that that I have as a man. I don't have to worry about walking around late at night or getting raped or something like that, or being objectified when I walk into the office. And that's something that that you may have to deal with, Stacy. And also, we talked about the privilege that yesterday you and I were talking, Stacy, that you have that that I don't necessarily have. But there's all sorts of privilege, and we didn't create the privilege that we have. We have to sort of deal with it. But girls go through so much. Here's a question for you, Stacy. I mean, you have a daughter. What conversations have you and your daughter had regarding just the Me Too movement? And there's Harvey Weinstein and R. Kelly and Bill Cosby, who's in jail right now.
Yeah.
Just how to function as a woman.
Yeah, so we talk about it a lot, and actually this program has been a great jumping off point, because I have very strong feelings that we talk about when we go into our class that we're talking to three categories of people. We're talking to people who have potentially or actually been victims of either sexual assault or bullying or hate crimes, and we talk to people that have done those crimes, the perpetrators or the offenders, and then we talk to people that are kind of in the middle, that have never done either one. They're just kind of on the fence, and we call those people the bystanders. And my belief is that we can change all the lives of all three of those categories of people. We can empower the victims to know that they have legal rights, to understand how to preserve those rights, and to hopefully, and I know, Reg, you'll understand this, to create a nurturing environment within law enforcement, and so that people come forward, they feel valued, they feel like it's not going to be a waste of their time to come forward. Daisy suffered some really horrible treatment from the cops, and if you saw the documentary, I mean, the sheriff in that documentary comes off as a worse bad guy than the bad guys. And so as far as my daughter goes, I've just been very honest with her from the beginning about social media, the uses of social media, and tried to start at the beginning. I mean, the facts are that kids as young as, these days, probably 5, but, by 12 or 13, for girls, the statistics are by, 40% of them maybe have already sent a sext. And so are you going to walk into that classroom and tell them, don't ever send a sext? If you do, that's it. you can't do that because you've got already kids that have already done that. So it's a little bit about both, I guess, again, empowering them to know that something's against the law. And I think that's really important for bystanders, because often, and George Floyd comes to mind here, the worst crimes that we see are ones where people are standing by and they don't know what to do, or they don't know what the law is. And in the George Floyd case, I think we all knew what the law was. I don't mean to say that wasn't an obvious abuse of power,
Yeah.
but in a situation where someone's being harassed and somebody thinks it's funny, and you're standing there and you're not doing anything, what is your responsibility in that circumstance? And so we spend a lot of time on that, especially in helping kids to understand that it's okay to say no, and to allowing them to articulate, hey man, I don't want to be involved in this, because you know what, I could be an accomplice to this crime, and maybe I want to go to college, and maybe that's gonna, that college isn't going to let me in because I was an accomplice, and no, I didn't rape this person, but I shut the door, or I stood there and laughed.
Right.
And the law is changing as far as what is required to be an accomplice in that situation. And so we talk a lot with the kids about, well, what if you just like something that's racist or sexist or shows abuse? I mean, if you just thumbs up it on Facebook, well, the kids know a lot about First Amendment rights, but not so much about encouraging a crime. And so just to finish this off, like one of the real life examples we use is, now you have Periscope and these other live streaming videos, and you have situations where crimes are being committed, and the people filming the crimes have said that they continued filming because they saw how many likes they got. And at that point, are the people that are liking it part of the problem? I say yes. The law is a little more unsettled, but yeah. So we sort of talk about this stuff all the time, and I could talk about this stuff for forever. But it's, I think it's, it is to me part of all of what's happening right now. Me Too, BLM, is that we're kind of churning around, and we're trying to figure out how to address all these things. And it really is good when things get to be more in the public. And I hope that people don't get sort of tired of hearing about it. Do you know what I mean? I mean, we need to continue.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think awareness is so important. And I think you're absolutely right. If you're idle, or if you're just watching, you're almost like a co-conspirator. I mean, you're either take action or you have to, I mean, it's almost, I forget what the effect is. It was a woman who, we talked about this before, Norman. There was a woman in the 60s. She was raped.
New York. Yeah. Is it Kitty?
Dana Basie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm sure you've heard about that, Stacy, where there were bystanders who were in their apartment.
There was an apartment building of people. There were windows facing this.
Yeah.
While she screamed and...
Right, exactly. They listened to her scream for like hours and hours, and nobody came out because everyone either said, well, someone else will figure it out, or I don't want to be involved. And of course she died. So it's you have to be proactive. As far as law enforcement is concerned, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I work in the district attorney's office, we have attorneys who are very, very mindful of how we treat our victims, to make sure that they are, that they feel in a warm environment. They feel that they're not just going to take the stand and, nothing's going to happen. And of course, law enforcement, the cops, they're even doing training, sensitivity training, to say, hey, listen, we're here for you. And also, kids need to be trained as to, hey, just because I filmed somebody, it's not about the likes, but it's about really just being compassionate. We also talked about how theater, I've always felt that theater allows me, and I think anyone involved in theater, to have compassion about other individuals, because we're always stepping into someone else's shoes. So I may not be a woman, but if I see a theater, if I'm part of a production where we talk about these issues, then I'll be enlightened as a person. And so, I think all of these things are important.
Well, it's funny. I saw on Twitter, there's a woman I follow on Twitter. I love her. The feminist next door. She's wonderful. And she basically has made herself a target so that stuff comes at her, and she has very common sense, but often for a man, illuminating, perspective. So there's been this big debate about, there was a conversation apparently going on about men stepping in and not letting things happen in front of them. And the guy responding kind of was like, so you want the women to protect themselves and be safe, but you want me to step in where this is a threatening situation. How am I supposed to do that? And her quick response back was, if you're wondering how to de-escalate a situation, you might pay attention to how women do it, since that's what they've been doing for millennia.
There you
And I
go.
was like, boom! Oh, my brain just exploded. I loved it.
Yeah, it's so sad. I'm glad to see you laughing. Yeah, it's a very sad situation, but I think as the generations become more and more, the good old boy and the macho boys will fade away, and we'll have more sensitive. I mean, I remember my sister once called me metrosexual. I had no idea what that meant, but she basically meant the sensitive man, you know, the man who really cares and who will check in. You know, we talk about that in theater all the time. Checking in. Is it okay to do this? Is it okay for that? And checking in is something that can go beyond theater and should be, you know, a sort of a standardized things for all of us, because it just makes, you know, the world better.
Yeah,
And with that said, yeah, absolutely. And with that, we can segue into an origin story for Stacy Kray. But before we do that, I'm going to play your music, a bit of your music from Love the Struggle. This is a wonderful song called Tool.
Let men dictate, manipulate the shape we take. So let me drill it in, 'cause they will hammer you. Oh yeah, they'll try to screw you, wrench you out of your dreams. Girls, men make the rules, branded as fools, right for abuse. Find your vibrant truth. Don't be a tool. Don't get used.
That is Tool.
Wow.
I love the struggle. Yeah, really, really cool. So, Stacy, you know that's just fantastic. That's one of your songs. I imagine you wrote that.
Yair and I wrote it together, and the singer was Grace McLean, who's a wonderful Broadway actress, who is also a songwriter herself, and really brought some amazing energy to the song. So I just want to thank her, because it's fun. That's what we were doing right before COVID, was recording Grace and some other folks, and it's fun to hear the songs done and mixed and being played. So yeah, that song is kind of midway through the first act, and it's Beauvoir talking to her students, her female students. She's been basically told to go in and teach the, you know, the traditional text in philosophy, and she kind of closes the books and is like, look girls, I'm gonna teach you about the way life really works. And so that's her song. It's the beginning, I guess, of her her feminist awakening, is what I would say.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And I love the fact, I mean, obviously, you know, the Sartre Beauvoir story goes back from, I think they met, I'm not sure, maybe in the 30s, or maybe even
1929.
1929. But of course, you're mixing in sort of modern music. I mean, that song, I mean, Beyonce could sing that.
Yeah.
That's an F sharp, right? I think that's the key.
Yep.
Yep. Good. The ear still works. So tell us an origin story. How did you get involved in theater? Where were you born and raised and all that stuff? Let's go from the very beginning.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, born in New York City, and then moved away very quickly. My parents essentially kind of went bankrupt, and then moved back home to after a couple of other stops, to Omaha, Nebraska. So I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska until I was 18. Then I went to college in Texas, which was a whole other awakening. That's where I studied philosophy. I had some brilliant professors where I went to school, fell in love with philosophy, decided I wanted to get a PhD, and then started thinking about how hard it was to get a job as a professor. And I was like, well, what else could I do? And then that's when I said, all right, well, I guess I could go to law school, because you don't really need any special expertise for that. So then I went to law school at Berkeley, and then ended up just loved the Bay Area and stayed. My interaction with theater came through the church when I was a kid. I was in the church choir. My mom wrote a bunch of liturgical musicals and adaptations of children's fairy tales. And when I was a kid, she was the playwright in residence at our wonderful local children's theater. And so I sang, and but I never wrote a song, and I didn't play guitar. And then when I was about 30, I got a guitar and I started just playing chords. And I was just fascinated by the whole idea of how you put, I had never really thought about how you put music together before. And then I got super into theory for a while, not super complicated. You and I have talked about not jazz theory or anything, like just kind of more simple theory, and really wrote a song before I knew what I was doing, if that makes any sense. And then just fell in love with it, particularly as a way to communicate ideas with people and communicate things about myself, including about philosophy, that I didn't feel I could do in conversation. And so I often tell people now, like, you want to know who I am? We can go off for 2 weeks together and try to get to know each other, or I can play you one song that I've written. And that will give you a better understanding of kind of who I am and what emotions exist in me. And I believe in music as this incredible, very primal language that I think neurology will eventually show has these amazing ways to connect us with ourselves and with each other in a way that just blows all verbal communication out of the water. So that's how I got into music. And then, I wrote a couple of albums and had, some local success here. And then I got to the point where I really wanted to write some songs on a theme. I was writing pop songs. And I sort of thought, well, maybe I could do something in musical theater. And I thought, well, I have to write about philosophy because that's something I know something about. And it's something that's deeply interesting to me. So I read this book called The Great Philosophers Who Failed at Love, which was very funny. It was like a page of biography for, of Aristotle, and then a page of what he did in his real life. Like, he had 5 wives, and some of the people had, strangled their wives. I mean, it was very dramatic. And then I got to the chapter on Sartre and Beauvoir, and I had studied them both in college, and I really never had focused at all on their relationship. And frankly, I had not focused on Beauvoir very much at all. I found her, when I read her in college, to be absolutely impenetrable. But I loved Sartre, and I loved being in nothingness. And when I realized what their relationship was, and more importantly, that the things that I had read in college that were their quote unquote philosophical works were actually autobiographical and were really a lot about their own relationship and their relationship with other people. That's when I got sort of hooked. And then I read Hazel Rowley's biography about Sartre and Beauvoir. I mentioned her because she also wrote a biography of Richard Wright. The story is just so incredibly colorful that
wait a minute, who was the writer?
Hazel Rowley. You should know her.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Her, Richard Talavera focused on her on Before the Dream.
Yep. Yes.
So she wrote a wonderful biography about the two of them, and again, it's very, it's gossipy. It's fun. It's not that serious, but it's very, very gossipy and interesting. And talked a lot about the other people, the other characters in their lives. And I really started focusing a lot on. And the other thing to say is that when I read Being in Nothingness as a college student, I happened to be doing a study abroad thing where I was in London, and it was like a tutorial system over there. We had 2 people in the class, and I had to teach the class once every 2 weeks for 3 hours. And so we got really deeply into this book in a way that I never would have in the States. And Sartre's vision of love is pretty pessimistic and grim. And it always haunted me. And I always felt like there was something that was just a little bit off about it, but I didn't know what. Mm-hmm. And I realized in researching this that I think that Beauvoir kind of had the antidote to that. And so I became very interested in that. So that was kind of the general things that were swimming around in my head. I knew Yair from, he was in my band, and we had worked together on some co-writing. We were in a band together, and went to him and said, I have this crazy idea about writing this musical, but I kind of want a male perspective. I don't really want to be writing this all by myself without kind of a colleague. And he's also brilliant musically. You know, would you do this with me? And he was like, sure. So that's how we began.
That's awesome. I did have it's like I asked one question and boom, and which is awesome. I really, but I did have some questions because when you talk about, I was reading to sort of prepare myself for the interview. I was reading a little bit about Sartre, sort of going back, and it's interesting. In Wikipedia, it says the conflict, according to Sartre, believes the conflict between oppressive, spiritually destructive conformity and an authentic way of being became the dominant theme of Sartre's early work. And he talked about being in nothingness, and also, I told you when I was at Duke Ellington School of the Arts, as a 15-year-old, our teacher gave us nausea, which was heavy, heavy lifting for a young kid. But it sounds like that's something that you believe as well. I mean, do you think that, one of the issues with, I guess, conformity, or I guess in life in general, as we try to maneuver in today's lives, is trying to conform, is trying to be, we're placed into a box, and we try to do the things that other people want us to do. And we're trying to say, no, I've got to figure out who I am without being put into the box. Would that be, is that your philosophy? Do you think that's Sartre's philosophy, Stacy?
Yeah, I think Sartre's philosophy would be essentially, the way he put it was, existence precedes essence. That is, we are here, and we are living beings, and we are what we are before we can be defined as what we are, which is not to say that we totally ignored historical circumstances or biographical circumstances. I mean, I'm a woman, I was born in New York City in that year, etc. But what he did believe was that you can overcome the stereotypes, I guess, about the way in which you're supposed to behave in that. He was very, I think it helps me sometimes to think about it in the sense of, he was very anti-Freudian. He was very anti the idea that because these things happen to you, that's why you are the way that you are, and you can't change it, or you're not able to do it.
It's almost
it reminds,
right?
I was just going to say, it reminds me a lot of Richard Wright. Like, his writing in Native Son and in Black Boy, to me, is a lot about the circumstances he finds himself in, and then a lot, especially in Black Boy, just kind of like understanding that people expect him to behave in a certain way.
Right.
White people, his family, his mother, his grandmother, all these people expect certain things. And he's smart enough to know he can give them to him, right? I mean, if he wants to, but he doesn't want to. He wants to be his own person. And to me, he's a great example of someone who kind of lived that life of coming from a certain demographic where, statistics said, maybe Freud would say, et cetera, you're going to end up like this. And he said, I understand the constraints I'm faced with, but I am going to fight those, and I'm going to try to be someone else that is unique. And so that, I think, is his, and yes, I agree with that. I agree with all of that wholeheartedly. I don't agree with everything that the existentialists have said, but I think once you begin to give up on your own ability to change and to learn and to have curiosity about ways in which you can be a different person, life becomes pretty dull. And of course there are obstacles, but I think having an attitude that you can change things on a micro level and on a macro level is, to me, it feels true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a couple of thoughts. I didn't want to cut in Norman, but there are some people who believe in predestination, or let's say, well, if you were born in, let's say, the ghetto, if you were born in a public assistance housing project, then this is your trajectory. This is where you're going to be. And, I think the magic of, if you want to deal with existentialism, is no, you can break out of that. You could be whatever you want to be, but you have to strip yourself. You almost have to, make yourself into a blank sheet of paper to say, okay, who cares what the world says that I am? let me redefine who I am. I mean, we've had a couple of individuals who are transgendered, you know, where they were like, hey, the world saw me as this gender or as this person. And I said, no, I see myself as something different. And there's something liberating about that, where you can say, I'm getting out of that box. And of course, Richard Wright is our favorite subject, and we talk about it all the time ad nauseum.
Well, I love the way so Wright in that same way said, I see this, I identify with this. This is exactly what I'm talking about. And Sartre just cuts him down and says, no, Richard, I'm actually flipping the equation in this sense. You are the oppressor. And he was just so horrified.
Yeah, that would be in my play. I mean, that's my interpretation of how he dealt with Baldwin and Richard. But I always
Yeah, I think it's
I
fairly
think that's
accurate.
right, and it's you know, we all there was a funny book that was written, and I don't know where I got this quote or what the book is, but the book is mistakes were made, but not by me. And it reminds me of that, like, you know, you can be this amazing person like Richard Wright was, the first of to do many things, right?
Right,
And to do it in his own way. And you know, I sort of see both sides. I see James's side too, right? You know,
right. Yeah, it's hard not
like,
to.
we're talking to everybody here. What do we say? It's part of the reason I don't delve too much into politics or saying things on Twitter, because I'm saying that to everybody. And there's a
Hmm.
lot of stuff I'd say to just you guys, but you know, what would I say to everybody? And I think James Baldwin was more in that, like, okay, we got to think about the impact of our words. And I don't think it's that
Right.
Wright didn't think about that. I think he was coming. I I find him to be one of the most honest writers that I've
Yeah.
maybe ever read. You know, just in kind of, this is how it is. This is how I feel, and I'm just laying it out there. And I think Baldwin was more thoughtful about trying to change the world. I mean, at least in the initial writings. I'm talking really about the stuff that I've read of his, which is the earlier. I've focused
Sure.
definitely right on the earlier stuff, because that's what intersects with Beauvoir and so anyway, that's
no, I totally understand. And, you know, you have to, so it's the balance between, hey, I've got to think about myself and who I am, my being, but also my relationship to the world. Because if you're not careful, you can delve into Ayn Rand territory. You know, I'm sure you've studied a great deal about Ayn Rand, where it's
right,
about me,
right,
Hmm.
and you know, if it doesn't suit me, then the hell with everything else, which is very,
right.
very. I mean, there's some Republicans who love Ayn Rand.
Well,
Well,
we just missed an opportunity. One of the current events that we didn't talk about, 75th anniversary of Hiroshima.
Oh, yeah.
oh
And I guess today
God,
is Nagasaki. Um,
wow.
and apparently there is a film. Now I want to find this film because the scientists were so horrified at what they had done that they got in touch with Lana Turner of all people to
Oh,
talk to Hollywood about making a movie about this. And they tried to, but Washington got involved, the military got involved, and so they kind of tweaked it. They were so worried about it, they talked to Ayn Rand and got her to write a script, which was so horrible nobody ever made that movie.
funny. Here's
Wow.
another. Here's a question for you, Stacy. Talk to us about the process of doing the musical and also getting involved in theater. Are you a lawyer?
I am. I'm a lawyer, so I do that, you know, to pay the bills until I strike it rich on Broadway.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, you are. I mean, you're almost a Renaissance woman. You know, there are certain individuals who they grab their law degree and they get into the practice or whatever they're doing, and that's basically it. And then they, you know, go home and or go on vacation. But you know,
Right.
art has been something that has really grabbed onto you. But
Yeah.
talk to us about the process of, because you sort of had to learn both how to create music and then creating a musical, because that's a whole different creature, and then writing a play. I mean, how difficult, how easy was that process?
So, you know, it was very piecemeal for me in the sense that I've been writing music in songs for more than 20 years. And that was a process that was first, you know, very much internal. I never thought I'd share my songs with anyone. And then and I think I always think of art as having these two components. There's the component of just expressing the thing because you need to get it out and you want to get it out. And then there's the second part, which is the sharing. with other people. And I was very enamored, and still am, of the self-expression part, and the like. There's nothing I love more than just being knee deep in a song or in a scene, and not thinking about where it's going to go, or who, how am I going to share it. With the music, I once I started sharing with people, I realized that I needed feedback. I needed more education, and so I found myself motorcycle. I found myself mentors to help me with songwriting, and I did a lot of songwriting. Been in a lot of songwriting workshops and songwriting salons, and I did that for years until I thought about writing a musical. And I think when I decided to write the musical, it was more about, I guess at a certain level, it didn't seem that hard. I think I was stupid because I read musicals, and Reg, you probably, and Norman, you as well. Many of them, the book part, it just really isn't that strong. It's a bunch of dialogue kind of connecting songs together. And I knew I could write songs, and I knew I could write songs that were meaningful to me and that were philosophical, because that was really all that I had ever written. And I also had so much material to work with in terms of ideas. These guys, they talk for chapters and chapters about shame and about jealousy,
right?
about
Yes.
love, and about all these things. It's like, how could you not? It's not like there's no ideas out there. So that process, it started. Our process was a little bit different than many. Once I had identified that we wanted to do this, I went through, I did song spotting. I basically went through and said, okay, what do I want to write a song about shame? I want to write a song about jealousy. And then I did a chronology of their lives and realized at some point you got to throw the chronology out the window, because it doesn't help, right?
Right.
And especially with 50 years of this couple. And then we started with songs. So we had seen I kind of a general plot outline, but then the songs were in there, and then we started with songs, and the first song that we wrote was Love the Struggle, and then, which is a song about love and conflict and female perspective. In this case, the female's perspective, she's a prostitute, so she's got her own view of how love works. And then we wrote, I think Shame was next. And again, those were the scenes in Being in Nothingness, about shame and about jealousy were so memorable to me that it was really easy to write the music. And the way that we worked on the music was differed from song to song. Sometimes we started with lyrics first. Sometimes we just started with a vibe of like, what does shame sound like? And it's gone through iterations. I mean, Reg, you saw the very first performance of where we ever went live at all. And what I struggled with most was trying to distill this ginormous project into 20 minutes and make it something that,
Wow.
that was
well,
like,
that's Musical Cafe,
right,
20, that's what you get.
that could make sense to an audience, right? I mean, that felt like a bit like a musical. And I think we did it pretty fair. I mean, we had some amazing actors. You remember who was Sartre? It was Dave Abrams, who has now won 3 TBA awards. And he was incredible. And Liz Curtis was our Beauvoir. So we had
Elizabeth Curtis. Wow, I was on stage with her. We did we did Civil War Christmas together. Wow, small world. Go ahead.
Yes. And I came to see that.
Oh, you saw me on stage.
I must have not known that you were in it. I saw Liz there. How could I have not known that? Anyway, it was a great show.
Yeah. Didn't you see a black union guy with playing the guitar?
I mean, yes, I did.
Yes,
there.
That was me.
How could I not say that? That's bizarre. Anyway, so that's how the process went.
Yeah. So are you working with like directors? Is there a why don't you tell us where things are right now with Love the Struggle, the musical?
Yeah, so we've done a number of those kinds of things where it's been sort of a developmental production or workshop. It's been less than the entire show. The most Folsom one that we did was in New York with Equity Actors as part of a festival in New York. And we did kind of the first act, and we had full choreography. And it was amazing. And we worked with an amazing director out there who had done Broadway as an assistant director, and learned a ton about the show. Since then, we've done more of these kind of, again, like just a few 30 minutes of the show for developmental purposes. And then we are making recordings. We've made these recordings with these Broadway folks. And the next step for us, we think, is a developmental reading, hopefully at a theater. Sorry, not a developmental reading, a real developmental production. Readings are difficult for this show because a lot of it's very visual. That's been.
Stacy, there?
She may be there. She's frozen.
Yeah.
That's kind of
There she is. We lost that last bit.
I think there's, what I think is, so I said, we'd like to have a developmental production at a regional theater or a local theater.
Yeah.
And we'd also love to eventually have it be commercial and
Yeah.
play somewhere in New York.
It sounds like you're shopping for a company. Are you shopping for a company or a producer?
Yeah, absolutely. You got any idea?
I hear you. No, I totally hear you. I had a question for you, Norman. I wanted to bring you in because talking about existentialism and, getting out of the conformity of life, because that's what Sartre, was talking about. It applies in theater too, like let's say you have a student, as you have an actor walking on the stage. Isn't the philosophy sort of removing, sure, you can take parts of yourself, your past lives or whatever, and apply it to on stage. But really, if you have to be a Shakespearean production, you can't be, a kid from the ghetto or whatever. You sort of have to strip a little bit of yourself away. I mean, what do you think about that, Norman? I mean, do you?
Well, so it's funny because as we keep talking around Sartre, I read a cute graphic that did a good job of graphic novel did a good job of very lightly touching on the man and these ideas. And what I love about it is the ideas are so simple. They're so basic that it's easy to lose them. And it's easy to even understand, wait a minute, what is he talking about? If you say nothingness, to try to grasp with these concepts, you get big. And so you can see how his brain would just shut down. He would lose his mind. And it took me, I had to read back. I went, wait a minute. Oh, okay, you barely kind of reference this, but the man lost his mind for a while and then he came back. There's something so immediate about existentialism that really relates to theater. A guy walking down a street is a guy walking down the street. It doesn't matter what era, what place, whatever. It's a guy walking down the street. So the actor has to bring that to life. And the play that I think, one of the plays that does it so well, which is a very existential play, is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
Oh, good.
Where you open with two actors walking on stage, one guy flipping a coin and the other guy just saying heads. And they just keep going for pages. And how do you make that real? Well, you can tell that what the playwright wants is for you to make a very immediate experience that these two people are grappling with that eventually explodes into, this is the question of the play. Where are we, who are we, and what are we doing? So you can take on these big concepts, but for the actor, you really have to bring it down to, why am I flipping the coin again? And why am I just calling it out? You could flatten that to a really boring thing, but that's the play that made me realize why live theater is still meaningful, because I sat there just going, oh my God, when I read the script, I was like, there's almost nothing here.
Yeah, it also reminds me of No Exit. I think,
yes.
I forget who wrote that. Was
That's
that
Sartre.
Yeah. No Exit. And there's actually a wonderful Twilight Zone episode that sort of echoes No Exit. 5 characters in a room. I think they're searching for an exit, and one is, to make a long story short, they're toys. They don't know they're toys. And
oh my God, I have to see this. It sounds amazing.
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous piece.
Yeah, no, it's actually awesome. Stacey, I want to get back to you because Simone de Beauvoir, I keep on screwing that name up. It's so interesting. I mean, I tried touching onto the relationship between a genius and the woman who has to sort of be on the sideline, but wants to be a partner, but is sidetracked. I mean, Richard, I dealt with it with Richard and Ellen, but also a good friend of mine, um, Scott Munson. He wrote a piece based on Bertolt Brecht, and Brecht reminds me a lot of Sartre in that he wrote at a very difficult time, and he was considered a genius, and he wrote about big things, but he also had a woman on the side, and they had a sort of a relationship where she was sort of, I mean, we're dealing with women who are geniuses in their own right, but they take on the role of well, I've got to step one step behind for the man. I mean, is that the story of Simone de Beauvoir?
I'm not. No, I don't know.
It's interesting because I think it's changed over time, and scholars have their own view of it. And if you were at a Beauvoir conference, there'd be 75 different factions of who believed what about their relationship. What I can say is that she held her own for sure with him intellectually, and
Mm-hmm.
and the funny thing is, they graduated the same year from the Sorbonne, and but Simone was the ninth woman ever admitted, and the youngest woman ever, and they finished first and second. Sartre was first, but he had failed the year before because nobody could understand what he was talking about.
Right.
And then the judges said later, they interviewed them because they were both famous by that point, and the one, at least one of the judges said, well, you know what, we really gave him the prize because he was a man, and we knew that he'd make a name for himself, and what was she going to do? She was just going to go get a job teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So she had that. And she definitely had what I would call, a mid-century sensibility about a woman's place. Although in France, I would say it was a little different. But I never, Sartre never belittled her. I don't think he ever belittled her. I think he always pushed her towards her talent. He encouraged her to write. He encouraged her to continue her intellectual pursuits. She edited his works until she died. He edited her works. So there was he was certainly more famous in the beginning, but at the end she was more famous. She became, when he was sort of, there was this lovely for a play, right? The characters, one character is going up, the other character is going down, and then in the other act it goes the other way. By the after the Second Sex was published, and in the 60s, Beauvoir was very much sought after because of the Second Sex, and Sartre had kind of fallen away a little bit, certainly for philosophy. So
Mm-hmm.
these days it's very hard to find, for example, a philosophy department in America that teaches existentialism and that teaches Sartre. I mean, it's not, some people don't consider it kind of real philosophy. So I think that, and then they have this weird relationship, right? This kind of
Right.
polyamorous relationship where neither one was ever really beholden to the other. So I never, and you'll find people differ on this, Reg, and there are plenty of people who feel like Beauvoir, cast herself aside for Sartre. I don't feel that way about her. I think
Mm-hmm.
she chose what she wanted to do, and I don't think that he ever stopped her from being creative and pursuing her dreams as a writer.
Yeah, it's just so sad. It sounds like, because I know that Sartre won a Pulitzer Prize. It sounds like de Beauvoir could have easily won a Pulitzer in her own right if she lived in a different era, if she lived in today's era, because it sounds like she was just as brilliant, if
Yeah,
not more, than Sartre.
she did win she won some prizes in France. I mean, the other thing too to keep in mind is their politics. I mean, that to me explains a lot of why they have kind of fallen by the wayside in the United States. I mean, they were both very staunch. For a while, they were communists, then they were very staunch socialists. And that sort of philosophy, in the 80s, right? It didn't get a lot of traction here. So there's that piece as well. But there are a lot of people who think that in the long run, she will be much more widely remembered than he will. And I don't think that she felt ignored. I mean, she was the most famous female intellectual in France almost her entire adult life. So I think she's, um, you know, she's not as well known in America as she should be, because she really is the grandmother of Steinem and Betty Friedan and all of those women.
Oh, interesting. She was part of the women's movement even before then. Wow. Wow. I didn't know that.
Way before. So The Second Sex, which is the book that, I keep referencing Black Boy, and that's Richard Wright's book, because he wrote it in, I think, 45, and The Second Sex came out in 49, and they were friends by then. And there's a lot of similarities. So if you haven't read The Second Sex, it's not autobiographical in that sense, her book, but it's very much about how am I in the world as a woman? Whereas I think Richard was how can I be as a Black man in the South? And that book is absolutely the Bible of feminism, and read by many, many feminists in the United States. And Friedan and Steinem, those guys were mid to late 60s. So 20 years later, she was writing things about how women would, needed to be independent, how if they just had equal footing, that, gender relations would be much more positive, that the thing that was really holding women back, where she went through a list of things, there's biology, there's laws, there's myths about women and what they can and can't do, there's stories about women and what they can and can't do, and there's men holding women down. And one of the really interesting things that I think is a parallel to Richard Wright again is she viewed women as the other. They're not, nothing is written for them. Society wasn't molded around them. So society was molded around men and their way of thinking and the way that they wanted things to be. And so women were written out of the law and couldn't, at that period in France, own property or have an abortion or, have really any kind of autonomy at all. And those ideas really still found the feminist movement that really only got underway in that second wave in the late 60s.
I wonder if, because I know Betty Friedan wrote The Feminine Mystique, and I'm not sure when she wrote that, but it sounds like do you think she was motivated by Simone de Beauvoir, or do you think that happened separately? I don't know if you...
There's so much there, there's a lot. I try not to get too deep into sort of the fights among the feminists of who did what when or who's influencing who, because that stuff is really the subject of these people that spend their entire lives, as professors, studying these things and trying to figure out who influenced whom. And like I said, there've been articles about did Beauvoir influence Wright or did Wright influence Beauvoir, right? And like, to me, Friedan is one who I think has said that Beauvoir didn't influence her, but do we know if she did? Now, Steinem has been very vocal about that.
Maybe it was subconsciously. Maybe it was subconscious. Maybe something. Yeah.
I mean, Gloria Steinem, when Beauvoir died, wrote in the New York Times that she was the single most important woman in the history of feminism in the 20th century.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
She's given it up for Beauvoir. But as far as the other feminists, I don't know them as well. And then there are issues too. Beauvoir wasn't perfect, right? So she was doing this all from her own little bubble. And there's been a lot of criticism about her for not seeing deeply enough into specific problems of women because of race and because of their economic circumstances and because of their sexual orientation. She did look at it from sort of a white European perspective, although she was smart enough. Richard was her friend at that point. She did talk some about race, but I think these days she would be held to that, the standards that we see. And to me, it's sort of upsetting when we try to take people outside of their own historical context and judge them by today's standards in terms of what they should have said or what's politically correct now. I think she did a generally good job.
Yeah, obviously you can't control what environment or what era you come from. It's so interesting. You're absolutely right. I think, Wright did talk about the black man living in a foreign world. We even talked about, off mic about The Invisible Man, Ralph Ellison. And I had mentioned how I just don't know if that's applicable to today's world because, with social media and guys like P. Diddy and Jay-Z or whatever, is there such a thing as the invisible man, or even, can a woman really look at herself as an alien to a world created by men when you have Beyonce and, other women and influencers and all that sort of stuff, and even Michelle Obama.
Oprah.
Yeah, exactly. But it sounds like it all began, the source, really began with Simone. We could talk about Susan B. Anthony and some of the interrogation and
she would say that she stood on the shoulders of giants and such, but
Yeah.
I do think that her continuing influence is really is not given enough credit in the United States, as far as
agreed.
Really as far and Sartre as well, as far as mores go, as far as Americans' feelings about freedom, about responsibility, about the way in which we interact with other people. Their ideas are still very modern. And I think when you hear people because this is a play somewhat about polyamory, when I go and talk to young people about their people in college, for example, about their views on this and their views on love, the views of Sartre and Beauvoir really resonate with them still as being very culturally relevant and thoughtful. And so part of the impetus behind making this play, right, was certainly as a young person, you get into romantic and love relationships and you get hurt or you hurt other people. And one of the beauties of theater, I know Reg will agree because we talked about this a little bit, is that it allows you to get outside of your own skin and experience things, even as an audience member or as a director or as an actor or as a writer, that you don't otherwise have to experience, and to work through those things in your head and in your emotions, so that you don't get into a situation where you go, for example, oh no, I think it'd be great to have a polyamorous relationship and have 5 girlfriends at the same time, and you don't think about what's going to happen when jealousy comes into that, and maybe it's your own jealousy, and are you gonna end up hurting someone or changing their life in a way that's negative before you've really even thought through how these things are going to work in a practical world.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. And I think it's really, really awesome. And I can't wait to see where Love the Struggle goes in the future. One last question before we wrap up, because it's 1:10. How has Bay Area theater, how's it treated you? I think Musical Cafe really gave you a nice launch. Are you frustrated with the process? Are you happy, satisfied? And also, what are your next work? There's got to be something after Love the Struggle, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm frustrated, because we haven't reached out that much to try to do things here. We've been focused on trying to get the show together, and we've had opportunities come from all different places.
Right.
And so the Musical Cafe, and we did their Next Stages program too, which was basically mentored readings with actors and with a Ming Khan, who did The 4 Immigrants, was our composer mentor, which was super fun, and Anthony Clairvaux was our script consultant.
Nice.
So we're at this point now where I'd love to find a Bay Area theater that would love to do this. I will say this: I am frustrated by what I perceive to be a lack of theaters interested in doing new musicals
True.
in the Bay Area. I don't think there are very many, and so unless you can sort of get into, a Berkeley Rep or a Theater Works, it's really hard to find theaters that are committed to doing that and can do it, because honestly, and I understand why. It's a resource intensive,
right,
really hard thing to do, especially with a show that really needs, for example, as ours does, choreography to bring it to life. It's just you saw Nia. It's a lot to bring all that together and make it look good. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're at a very good start. I mean, you already have Broadway actors working with you. You're already working in New York. At least the show is got some developments there. So it's on the ground, and I'm sure there are lots of individuals who are watching our podcast who are like, "Wow, I want to do what Stacey's doing right now." So it's motivating. It's very motivating, and you should be very proud, Stacey. You've done so much. You know. Because a lot of individuals, they go to school and they're deeply involved in the theater community, and you sort of just come in from the outside, as a songwriter, as someone who's written records, and you're already getting a musical up and about. So you should be very proud.
Well, ultimately, it's always, that person wanting to express something. So however you got here and you're
Yeah.
ready for it. It's kind of great.
No, it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, we have to keep going. And like I said, I'm really grateful to all the people that have helped us along the way. And I don't know where we're going next, but it does seem to me like nice things keep, like this podcast, keep sort of dropping out of the sky and bringing me back in and making me feel like, oh yeah, people are interested in this. It's good.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I've asked you several times to come on, and I'm so glad that you took the time, and you deserve it. Good things for good people. Shout outs, birthdays.
Birthdays. Miranda Ashlock is a young woman I worked with last summer on As You Like It, and her birthday, I think, is today. She is a costumer. BB Temple is somebody I actually went to SF State with, and she moved back east, and then she and her husband started to create a whole theater scene. I want to say Massachusetts, I can't really remember. Carol Lashoff is a local playwright I've met through Playground. Jeffrey Greer, I don't think we've actually ever worked together, but he runs oh gosh, what's it called? It's in the city, San Francisco Recovery Theater, which for a while they sort of were doing a cabaret at a Piano Fight back when, people
fun.
actually went to places. And then the bar section, they would run a cabaret, I think once a week. It was pretty cool. Guy Totaro is somebody else I went to San Francisco State. He left the country, ended up in Japan, and has been making a living as a clown. But I don't know what they call that in Japan, but he's been doing that kind of work. Has a child, has really just sort of set roots down, still doing theater, but who would have thought coming out of college, bam, that's where I'm going. John Warren is actually the person I need to get off as soon as I can and call, because it's his birthday today.
Yeah.
He was a director with Unconditional Theater, and he has gone on to do a lot about social justice and theater, and currently teaches at Urban School in San Francisco, but is already looking to think about what that next thing is, and it's his birthday today. Britt Frazier is somebody I think I first met when she was at Laney College and has gone on to be on most of the major stages in the Bay Area. She's fantastic, and she also directs. Michael Cano, stage manager in the Bay Area. I haven't crossed paths with him in probably a couple of decades now, but I still hear his name out there. I hope he hears mine. Sarah Shroud is somebody else who was not a theater background person, but she and a couple of her friends got caught. I think it was Afghanistan. They were hiking and they went across a border and they got grabbed. This was all in the news a few years ago, and she came back and actually started writing pieces about social justice. So she did a piece a couple of years ago called The Box that got a lot of attention here. Her birthday's coming up this week. Darlene Miyakawa is a not local, but stage manager who's been working all up and down the coast and beyond. Michael Orlando Trujillo, I don't know if you know him, but before there was EastEnders, that crew did a show and we were in it. It was called Three Policemen. And he sent me a photo a couple of years ago from it, and I was like, oh my God, we were all such babies. Kevin Ralston is somebody I know through Each One Reach One, actor, and he does much more than that, but that's what we did there. Bernard Vosch is somebody I met as a coach for a Shakespeare play, and then I later on found out he was an actor in his own right. Michael Barrett Austin was my scene partner last summer in As You Like It. He played Orlando, the love interest of the play. Wonderful guy, and I got to just work with him on Playground's Best Of Festival We got to do a short piece where you barely saw his face. You actually didn't see his face till the end of the play, but throughout you kept seeing this ball, this baseball, and it was him in a green suit. We totally put him in a green suit, and all you'd see is the ball and somebody motioning and moving it in this baseball piece about Michael Jordan's last at bat. Yuriko Doi Walker is one of the founders of Theater of Yugen in San Francisco, doing no theater in Japanese classical form. Kevin Fortson is somebody I went to high school with, and I'm not sure what he's doing now, but the last I'd heard he was producing in TV. I mean, the last I heard it was on Oprah, so I know that that's no longer happening. And then finally, Zara Berkman is a woman, an actor who I first saw at the Magic in an incredible play. It was actually a rental that had come into the space. It had been at Marin Theater Company, extended until they couldn't extend it anymore, and then they brought it to the city where it continued to extend. And then she and I ended up working on playmaking with Berkeley Rep, where we would go into youth facilities and teach, the basics of playwriting. So that is my list of birthday people for the week.
Okay, and I only have three. You took away Michael Austin and Michael Austin and also John Warren. They were former guests on the Yay, so you can hear those interviews earlier. The three that I have, Katie Amon, she is a young actress in the Bay Area, and her birthday was yesterday, August the 7th. And two others, Eli Sonny Ortiza. We've been talking a lot about the Living Document, and he's the creator of the Living Document. He's also an actor and producer. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing a bunch of stuff. I don't know if that's Stacy. But in any case, his birthday is on the 12th. Also on the 12th is Cecilia Palmtag, and I worked with Cecilia. She Hedda Gobbler. She did Hedda Gobbler. She was Hedda Gobbler. And also she directed Lifetimes 3, and she was a former guest on the Yay. And so I'll say happy birthday to Cecilia. Any shows? There are a couple of, I've got some shows.
Yeah, I've got a Culture Shock, which is tonight at 6 o'clock, Gritty City Rep. They're going to be doing a reading. There's a wonderful cast of folks directed by Sherry Lynn Miller. I have a link for the Playground Festival, which is available on demand for free through September 1st. And I don't have the third one because it's on Facebook and I can't figure out how to make a link for it. But there's a wonderful short piece that Hansford Prince did, an actor. I think his birthday wasn't too long ago, and he's a wonderful Bay Area actor. Does this very cute piece that was totally written for Zoom. An old man dials the wrong number on Zoom and ends up talking to a little kid. It's fun. It's a fun piece. So I'll put those in the chat, and that's what I got.
I've got two. TVA, Theater Bay Area, they have the virtual regional auditions. Usually there would be a cattle call of the regular auditions where you go to a particular place and you do your audition material to several directors and producers. Now, of course, it's virtual, and the deadline is August the 10th. That's this Monday. So if you're a budding actor and you want to get your name known, you can film an audition piece and you submit it to TBA, and I'll have a link for that. But the deadline is on Monday, August the 10th. Much Ado About Nothing, Plethos Productions is doing a streaming of that, and Priya Gayadeen is in it, and a couple of other folks are in it. That'll be from August the 14th through the 23rd, and we'll continue to plug that. And that's what I have. Stacy's mic, I think Stacy may have had some technical difficulties. Oh, there she is.
No, there she is.
Are you there?
I am. I just turned it off because I was afraid my background noise, which was cars going by, was...
No, that's fine. Did you enjoy yourself, Stacy?
Oh, yeah, this was delightful. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure having you. And as I tell everyone who listens to the Yay or who's watching the Yay, you're probably watching this on YouTube. Actually, I checked on Facebook. We're getting like 55 subscriptions, 55 likes via Facebook. So we're sort of growing.
Nice.
Not big, but it's bigger than what we had beforehand.
Right.
And also we're gaining a presence on YouTube. So everyone, thank you so much. Like, subscribe. If you don't like it, tell me why, and we'll fix whatever we can. For those who listen the usual podcast way. You can listen to the A podcast on any app that you listen to your podcasts on. If you're an Apple user like me, you can look into the little purple app on your phone. Matter of fact, I can even show you right there. It's right there. You just click on it. Hey, why not? Why not?
Yes.
And you can, oh, sorry about that. Yeah, there you go. The A, we're right there. And if you're an Android user, you can use the SoundCloud app or just go on soundcloud.com and you can find us. The A was created by theater people for theater people. If you have a show you want to advertise, or if you just want to advertise yourself, let us know. Hit us up on Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram. You can find me at Red Space Clay.
And I'm at Who's Your Hoosier.
Stacy, where can people find you if they want to contact you?
Yeah, but the best place would probably be on the Love the Struggle website, which is lovethestruggle.org.
Yeah, we'll definitely put a link to that as well. And we wish you the absolute best, Stacy, and Love the Struggle and, the future endeavors. And, of course, let us know, what the next development of that will be. And, as we always say,
gotta find a better sign off.
We are out.